Hi, my name's Phil and a warm welcome to Festool TV. When working with the Domino DF 500, we can use this machine for many different types of applications. An application I'd like to go through with you today is joining staircase components together. So here we have an example of a handrail and of course the spindle as well. And with the spindle we have a joint at 90 degrees and also at 30 degrees with these two components. And we can use a Domino DF 500 to join these two together very successfully to create a good, strong joint in this position. So, the next stage is to go through and we can show you how to set the machine up and also by using one of the accessories, a trim stop, to create this type of joint. So here we have one of the spindles, and the spindle is 30 millimeters by 30 millimeters. And of course, if I was to use the Domino DF 500 in this position, I may not always achieve that accuracy that I want, especially when I need to make repeat cuts. Because of course, with spindles going down the staircase, we may need to repeat the cut many, many times. And this is where we can use the trim stop, because this allows me to set the accessory up once, and then I can make repeat cuts all the time. On the front of the Domino 500 we have the fence, and then this can slide over, and then with the two metal parts, two clamps here, the two metal clamps, we can then bring this over and then secure this onto the front of the machine. And to set this trim stop up so it's very accurate, we can then turn the Domino machine over, undo the two green wheels, and now we can adjust these two sides according to the thickness of the timber that we're going to be working with. So my timber is 30 millimeters square. And to set the trim stop up, I can use a small offcut of material. So I can mark out by using a marking gauge to find the dead center line, or we can measure this off, or we can run a pencil line along the center. So I've got a small pencil mark in the center of the timber here. But where the Domino DF 500 is particularly useful is that on the base of the machine along here, we have a series of engraved markings. And I can line up my pencil line with this center line here, and that will give me the dead center of where the cutter is positioned. So now we can put the timber onto the fence, bring the timber onto the front of the machine, and then we can adjust the two sides to find exactly the dead center. When in the right position, we can then tighten these two wheels. And so now, with the trim stop accessory onto the DF 500, I can make repeat cuts on material. So I'm using a 6 millimeter cutter on the machine and a 40 millimeter domino to create the joint. So on the side here, we make sure that this is set to 20 millimeters and a 6 millimeter cutter. The timber's 30 millimeters, so we can undo the side here, and now the fence can be adjusted to 15 millimeters so we can put our domino in exactly the right position. And so the next stage is to switch the machine on, and then we can make our first cut. So with the DF 500, we can make the cut directly into the material, but we can also adjust the fence on the same piece of material that we're working with to allow for the angle cut as well. So that's the spindle part completed, and now we can look at how we can work with the main part of the handrail, and of course working with the DF 500 to set this up for the vertical cut into this material. So we can set this up in exactly the same way as we did with the spindle. So we can turn the machine around, and then we can open up the two halves of the trim stop. And then with an offcut here, again, we can use exactly the same way. We can either use a marking gauge to find the center line, or we can measure off, and then we can find the center part in this position put a small pencil mark on, and then we can transfer this along into that position and line this up with the engraved mark on the base of the machine. So you can put this profile onto the base of the fence, and then we can then centralise exactly where the timber is and then lock the two positions, or lock the two halves of the trim stop. And of course, because I need to work in the vertical position on this, it means that we can adjust the fence up into this position. Along here, the marking out has already been done. I want to make sure that my domino joint is positioned on this line here. But I also need to allow for exactly where the cutter is going to come out from the base of the DF500. So when I push the cutter out, the centre line of the cutter from here to here is at 10 millimetres away from the base. So I've offset all of my marking out to allow for this 10 millimetre line. So I want my domino to go into this position, but I'm going to line the base up of the DF500 along this line, and then that will allow for the 10 millimetre offset on the base. So the next stage is to position the machine onto our handrail, and then we can work our way along and cut the joints that we need. So, by working with the Domino DF500 for this type of jointing, and also working with the trim stop, it means we can make repeat cuts. I can set the trim stop up for one sample piece, and then the rest of my cuts can be made. And we can work quickly and efficiently with this type of machine. So, I hope this helped your understanding of working with the Domino DF500 for working with these types of components, and I'll see you again next time. Thank you.